The Manhattan skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ashford Technologies, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Catherine Walsh stood in the elevator, her heart pounding against her ribs as she clutched the small plastic stick in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines. Positive. The word echoed in her mind like a prayer and a curse all at once. She had rehearsed this moment 100 times during the subway ride to his office. How she would tell him. What his reaction might be. In her most optimistic fantasies, Derek would sweep her into his arms, his stern face breaking into that rare smile she treasured. But deep down, a cold fear whispered that she was about to watch her world crumble. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing the executive floor where power and money hung thick in the air. Catherine walked past the reception area, her modest dress a stark contrast to the luxury surrounding her. The receptionist barely glanced up, already accustomed to seeing Derek's girlfriend make her way to his private office. Derek Ashford sat behind his massive desk, his sharp features illuminated by the glow of 3 computer monitors. At 35, he had built an empire from nothing, transforming a small software startup into a billion-dollar corporation. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his suit tailored to perfection, and his gray eyes held the calculating coldness of someone who saw the world as a chessboard. Catherine. He acknowledged her presence without looking up from his screen. I have a meeting in 15 minutes. Make it quick. She felt the first crack in her resolve. This was the man she loved, yet he spoke to her as if she were just another item on his agenda. Catherine approached his desk, her fingers tightening around the pregnancy test hidden in her palm. Derek, I need to talk to you about something important. Her voice wavered despite her efforts to sound calm. He finally looked up, irritation flickering across his face. Is this about the charity gala next week? I already told you I cannot commit to attending. My schedule is packed. No, it is not about that. Catherine swallowed hard. It is about us. About our future. Derek leaned back in his leather chair, his expression shifting from irritation to something colder. Catherine, we have discussed this. I am not interested in labels or traditional relationship milestones. What we have works because it is uncomplicated. But what if things are about to get complicated? She placed the pregnancy test on his desk, her hand shaking. For a moment, Derek stared at the plastic stick as if it were a foreign object. Then his eyes snapped to hers, and Catherine saw something she had never witnessed before in the powerful Derek Ashford. Fear. Not the kind that comes from facing a challenge, but the kind that comes from losing control. You are pregnant. His voice was flat, emotionless. Yes. I found out this morning. I know this was not planned, but Derek, we can figure this out together. We can. No. He cut her off, standing abruptly. We cannot figure this out because there is nothing to figure out. You need to take care of this problem. Catherine felt as if she had been slapped. Problem? Derek, this is a baby. Our baby. It is a complication I cannot afford right now. He walked to the window, his back to her. I am in the middle of the biggest merger of my career. I have investors watching my every move. A child, a family, domesticity. These things do not fit into my life. What are you saying? Catherine's voice cracked. Derek turned to face her, and his eyes were as hard as stone. I am saying you have 2 options. Either you terminate this pregnancy, or you do it alone. I will not be involved. If you choose to keep it, consider our relationship over. I will not support this child financially or emotionally. You will be on your own. The words hung in the air like poison. Catherine felt her knees weaken, but she refused to collapse in front of him. Tears blurred her vision as she stared at the man she thought she knew. How can you be so heartless, she whispered. I love you. I thought you loved me. Love is a luxury I cannot afford, Catherine. I built everything I have through discipline and control. A child would destroy that. He picked up the pregnancy test and dropped it into the trash bin beside his desk. If you proceed with this, do not contact me again. I mean it. Catherine stood frozen, her entire world shattering around her. She had expected shock, maybe even initial resistance, but not this absolute rejection. Not this cruelty. Derek walked past her to the door, opening it in a clear dismissal. I have that meeting now. See yourself out. As she walked through the office in a daze, Catherine felt the stares of employees who had surely heard everything through the thin walls. Shame and anger warred within her, but beneath it all, a fierce determination began to take root. When she stepped out onto the busy Manhattan street, the noise of the city crashed over her like a wave. That night, alone in her small studio apartment, Catherine sat on her bed and placed her hand over her still flat stomach. Tears streamed down her face, but through the pain, a promise formed in her heart. I will love you enough for both of us, she whispered to the life growing inside her. Your father may have abandoned us, but I never will. The months that followed were the hardest of Catherine's life. Morning sickness kept her bedridden for weeks. Her job as a marketing coordinator became increasingly difficult to manage as her body changed. Whispers followed her everywhere. The office gossip mill churned with speculation about the father's identity, and Catherine endured it all in silence. Money became a constant source of stress. Her modest salary barely covered rent, let alone prenatal care and baby supplies. Catherine sold what little jewelry she owned, moved to an even smaller apartment in a less safe neighborhood, and worked extra hours whenever possible. Pride kept her from asking friends or family for help. This was her choice, her responsibility. When her water broke on a rainy Tuesday evening, Catherine called a taxi to take her to the hospital. She labored for 18 hours, alone in a sterile room, gripping the bed rails and crying out for someone who would never come. The nurses were kind but busy, and Catherine felt more isolated than ever. Then Emma was born. The moment the nurse placed the tiny, wrinkled baby in her arms, everything changed. Catherine looked down at her daughter's scrunched face, at the tiny fingers that gripped her thumb with surprising strength, and felt a love so powerful it physically hurt. This small, helpless creature was hers to protect, to nurture, to love. Hello, my beautiful Emma, Catherine whispered, tears of joy mixing with those of exhaustion. You and me against the world, little one. As she held her daughter close, listening to the soft sounds of her breathing, Catherine made a silent vow. Emma would never know rejection. Never know abandonment. She would grow up surrounded by so much love that Derek's absence would not leave a scar. In that hospital room, as the city hummed outside the window, Catherine Walsh became someone stronger than she had ever imagined possible. Not because she wanted to, but because she had no other choice. And somewhere across town, in a luxury penthouse, Derek Ashford sat alone with his success, unaware that he had just walked away from the only thing that would ever truly matter. 3 years passed like a relentless river, carving new landscapes in Catherine's life. The woman who emerged from those difficult years bore little resemblance to the naive girl who once stood trembling in Derek Ashford's office. Catherine had become steel-wrapped in softness, a mother whose love knew no boundaries but whose spirit had learned the hard lessons of survival. Emma was now a whirlwind of energy and curiosity. Her chestnut curls bounced as she ran through their modest 2-bedroom apartment, her laughter filling spaces that had once echoed with loneliness. She had Derek's sharp gray eyes, a fact that sometimes made Catherine's heart ache, but the warmth and joy in them were entirely her own. Catherine had clawed her way up from rock bottom. After Emma's birth, she had taken online courses at night while her daughter slept, earning certifications in digital marketing. A small boutique firm had hired her, appreciating her tenacity and fresh ideas. The pay was better, though still modest by Manhattan standards. They lived in Queens now, in a neighborhood where children played on sidewalks and neighbors knew each other's names. Their apartment was small but filled with love. Emma's drawings covered the refrigerator like colorful badges of honor. Second-hand furniture had been transformed with creativity and care. Catherine had learned to stretch every dollar, to find joy in simple pleasures. Weekend mornings meant pancakes shaped like animals. Evenings meant stories read in silly voices that made Emma giggle uncontrollably. "Mommy, look!" Emma called out one Saturday morning, holding up a drawing of two stick figures. "This is you and me." Catherine knelt beside her daughter, pulling her close. "It is beautiful, sweetheart. We make a great team, do we not? The best team ever," Emma declared with the absolute certainty only a 3-year-old could possess. These moments made everything worthwhile. The sleepless nights, the financial struggles, the loneliness that sometimes crept in during quiet hours. Catherine had built a life, not the one she had imagined, but a real one, solid and true. Meanwhile, across the city in his glass tower, Derek Ashford stood at the pinnacle of success. Ashford Technologies had tripled in value. He graced the covers of business magazines, was quoted in financial news, and commanded respect in boardrooms worldwide. His penthouse apartment showcased his wealth with minimalist elegance. Everything was exactly as he had planned. Yet something had shifted. Derek found himself distracted during meetings, staring out windows instead of at spreadsheets. He attended social events filled with beautiful people but left early, unsatisfied. At night, in his pristine bedroom overlooking the city, he lay awake wondering about choices made and roads not taken. He had convinced himself that cutting Catherine and the child from his life was necessary. Logical. But lately, memories surfaced unbidden. Catherine's smile. The way she laughed at his rare jokes. The warmth she brought to his cold, efficient world. And sometimes, late at night, he wondered about the child. Whether Catherine had actually kept it. What it might look like. Derek pushed these thoughts away, drowning them in work. But they kept returning, persistent as ghosts. The collision of their separate worlds came on an unseasonably warm evening in early October. Catherine had been invited to a charity gala by her company, a networking event for marketing professionals. She almost declined, unable to afford both a sitter and an appropriate dress. But her boss insisted, even offering to cover the ticket cost. Catherine borrowed a simple black dress from a coworker and arranged for her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to watch Emma. As she entered the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, she felt distinctly out of place among the designer gowns and expensive jewelry. But she held her head high, reminding herself that she had every right to be there. Derek attended the same gala out of obligation. His company was a major sponsor, and his presence was expected. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands and making small talk while his mind wandered elsewhere. Then he saw her. Catherine stood near the bar, laughing at something a colleague said. She looked different. Thinner, perhaps, but stronger somehow. Her hair was longer, pulled back in a simple style. She wore no jewelry except small earrings. Yet she was more beautiful than he remembered, radiating a quiet confidence that had not been there before. Derek's heart began to pound. For 3 years, he had successfully avoided thinking about her. Now, seeing her in person shattered every defense he had built. Before he could stop himself, he was walking toward her. Catherine felt his presence before she saw him. That familiar electricity in the air, the sixth sense that had always alerted her when Derek entered a room. She turned, and her breath caught in her throat. He looked exactly the same. Perfectly groomed, expensively dressed, those gray eyes that had once made her feel seen and special. Now they just reminded her of cold rejection. Catherine. His voice was softer than she remembered. Derek. She managed to keep her tone neutral, though her hands trembled slightly. She set down her glass to hide it. An awkward silence stretched between them. Around them, the gala continued, oblivious to the charged moment unfolding. You look well, Derek said finally, a massive understatement for the tumult of emotions coursing through him. Thank you. I am well. Catherine's voice was clipped. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, but pride kept her rooted in place. She would not run from him. I did not expect to see you here. Are you still in marketing? The casual question, as if they were old acquaintances catching up, ignited anger in Catherine's chest. Yes. I work for Henderson and Associates now. We do quite well. Derek nodded, searching for words that would not come. What could he say? How could he bridge the chasm of 3 years and unforgivable choices? Catherine, he began, but she cut him off. Do not. Her eyes flashed. Whatever you are about to say, I do not want to hear it. Not here. Not now. Not ever. Please, just let me. Let you what, Derek? Apologize? Explain? There is nothing you can say that will change what you did. You made your choice. I made mine. We have nothing to discuss. She turned to leave, but Derek caught her arm gently. Wait. The child. Did you? Catherine yanked her arm free, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. Did I what? Terminate my pregnancy like you demanded? No, Derek. I have a daughter. Her name is Emma. She is 3 years old, healthy, happy, and loved. Everything you will never be to her. The words hit Derek like physical blows. A daughter. He had a daughter. The reality of it crashed over him with devastating force. I want to meet her, he heard himself say. Catherine laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. You want to meet her? You, who told me to get rid of her? You, who threatened to abandon us if I kept her? You actually think you have the right to walk into her life now? I was wrong. The admission came out raw, unplanned. Catherine, I was wrong about everything. Yes, you were. And we survived your wrongness just fine. Emma does not need a father who sees her as an inconvenience. She does not need a man who might decide tomorrow that she is still too complicated for his perfect life. She needs stability, love, and commitment. Things you proved you are incapable of giving. Derek felt something crack inside his chest. The certainty that had governed his life for 3 years was crumbling. Please. I just want a chance to. To what? Ease your guilt? Make yourself feel better? This is not about you, Derek. It never was. It is about a little girl who deserves better than a father who comes and goes based on his convenience. Catherine's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. You made me believe I was not enough. That our child was a problem to be solved rather than a gift to be cherished. It took me a long time to understand that the problem was never us. It was you. Your fear. Your cowardice. Your inability to love anything more than your own success. Each word found its mark. Derek stood speechless, stripped of the armor of arrogance he had worn for so long. Stay away from us, Catherine continued. We do not need you. We never did. She walked away then, disappearing into the crowd. Derek remained frozen, the noise of the gala fading to a dull roar. For the first time in his adult life, he felt completely powerless. All his money, all his influence, all his carefully constructed success meant nothing in the face of what he had lost. That night, Derek returned to his empty penthouse and did something he had not done in years. He cried. Not polite tears of sentiment, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place he had locked away long ago. He cried for Catherine, for the child he had rejected, for the man he had become. And when the tears finally stopped, Derek Ashford made a decision. He would not accept Catherine's dismissal. He would not walk away again. He had spent 3 years running from the biggest mistake of his life. Now, he would spend however long it took trying to make it right. He had no idea if Catherine would ever forgive him. He had no idea if he could become the father Emma deserved. But for the first time since that day in his office, Derek understood something fundamental. Success without family was just expensive loneliness. And he was tired of being alone. The days following the gala were torture for Derek Ashford. He sat in board meetings without hearing a word, stared at financial reports without comprehending the numbers, and found himself doing something completely foreign to his nature. He researched how to be a father. His browser history became a monument to his desperation. articles about child development, blogs about co-parenting, videos about how to apologize meaningfully. Late one night, he even found himself watching a documentary about single mothers, tears streaming down his face as he recognized Catherine's strength in every story. But research was not action, and Derek knew that showing up in Catherine's life required more than internet wisdom. It required genuine change, and that terrified him more than any business deal ever had. Catherine, meanwhile, tried to return to normalcy. She told herself the encounter meant nothing, that Derek was simply a ghost from her past who would fade back into irrelevance. But Emma, with the uncanny intuition of children, sensed her mother's distraction. "Mommy sad?" Emma asked one evening, climbing into Catherine's lap as they sat on their worn couch. "No, baby. Mommy is just thinking." Catherine kissed the top of her daughter's head, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. "About what?" "About how lucky I am to have you." It was the truth, if not the whole truth. Emma giggled and snuggled closer. "I lucky too. You are the best mommy in the whole world." These words fortified Catherine. Whatever Derek wanted, whatever guilt drove him, it did not matter. She had everything she needed right here in her arms. But Derek was not deterred by her rejection. He began carefully, respectfully. First came a letter, delivered by courier to her office. Catherine almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Inside, she found not excuses or justifications, but a simple, heartbreaking apology. "Catherine, I have no right to ask anything of you. I understand that. But I need you to know that what I did was unforgivable, and I do not expect forgiveness. I was a coward who chose control over love, certainty over courage. You asked me once how I could be so heartless. The truth is, I was so afraid of losing control that I destroyed the only thing that ever truly mattered. I do not deserve to know Emma. I do not deserve a second chance. But if you would allow me, even from a distance, to support you both in some way, I would spend the rest of my life trying to become the man I should have been 3 years ago." Catherine read the letter 3 times, her emotions warring between anger and something she refused to name. She did not respond. A week later, a check arrived. Not an ostentatious amount designed to impress, but enough to cover 3 months of rent. Catherine stared at it for a long time before tearing it in half. She did not need his money. She had survived without it. But Derek persisted. Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but with quiet, consistent presence. He learned Catherine's routine, not through stalking but through careful observation during chance encounters he orchestrated. He began appearing at the small park near her apartment on Saturday mornings, always at a respectful distance, never approaching. Catherine noticed, of course. How could she not notice Derek Ashford sitting on a park bench in Queens, looking completely out of place in his expensive casual wear? At first, it infuriated her. Then it confused her. Finally, against her better judgment, it intrigued her. Emma noticed the man too. "Mommy, why is that man always here?" she asked one Saturday, pointing at Derek with the blunt honesty of a child. Catherine's heart clenched. "I do not know, sweetheart. Some people just like parks." But Emma, fearless and curious, had already started walking toward him. Catherine's breath caught in her throat as her daughter approached the man who had rejected her before she was even born. "Hi," Emma said brightly, stopping in front of Derek's bench. "I am Emma. I am 3 years old. What is your name?" Derek looked down at his daughter for the first time, and Catherine watched his face transform. All the hardness melted away, replaced by wonder and undisguised love. His hands trembled as he spoke. "Hello, Emma. My name is Derek. It is very nice to meet you. You come here a lot," Emma observed with the directness of childhood. "Do you like swings?" "I love swings." "I have never actually been on a swing," Derek admitted, his voice thick with emotion. Emma's eyes widened in horror. "Never? That is so sad." Come on, I will show you. Before Catherine could intervene, Emma had grabbed Derek's hand and was pulling him toward the playground. Derek looked at Catherine with such raw hope and fear that she found herself nodding permission, though every protective instinct screamed in protest. Catherine watched from a distance as Emma taught Derek how to swing, her daughter's laughter ringing out across the park. Derek was clumsy and clearly terrified of doing something wrong, but Emma was patient, encouraging him with the unself-conscious kindness that defined her personality. "Higher, Derek. You can go higher," Emma shouted, pumping her little legs. "I am trying," Derek called back, and Catherine heard actual joy in his voice. When Emma finally tired of swinging, she led Derek to the sandbox, chattering non-stop about her favorite things. Derek listened with complete attention, as if her 3-year-old observations were the most important information in the world. Catherine's defenses began to crack. This was not the cold, calculating man who had demanded she terminate her pregnancy. This was someone different, someone vulnerable and genuine. But could she trust it? Could she risk Emma's heart on a man who had already proven capable of walking away? As the afternoon sun began to set, Emma ran back to Catherine, breathless and happy. "Mommy! Derek is so nice. Can he come again?" Catherine met Derek's eyes across the playground. He had not moved from the sandbox, giving her space to decide. In his expression, she saw everything he could not say. The regret. The hope. The desperate desire to be part of something he had thrown away. "We will see, baby," Catherine said carefully. "We will see." Over the following weeks, a fragile routine developed. Derek came to the park every Saturday. Emma, who knew nothing of his history, accepted his presence with the easy trust of childhood. Catherine remained cautious, watching for any sign that he would disappoint them. But Derek was different. He showed up early and stayed as long as Emma wanted. He listened to her endless stories. He played games that clearly baffled him but made Emma laugh. He never pushed, never demanded more than Catherine was willing to give. One evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Catherine found Derek still sitting on the bench outside their building. The autumn air had turned cold, but he sat there as if waiting for permission to leave. Catherine surprised herself by walking over. "You will freeze out here." "I do not mind," Derek said quietly. "I spent 3 years in warmth and comfort, but I was frozen inside. This cold is nothing." Catherine sat down beside him, maintaining distance but acknowledging his presence. They sat in silence for a long moment before she spoke. "Why now, Derek? Why, after all this time, do you suddenly want to be a father?" "Because I saw what I lost." His voice was raw. "For 3 years, I told myself I made the right choice. That control and success were enough. Then I saw you at that gala, and everything I had convinced myself of shattered. But it was not until I saw Emma that I understood the true cost of my cowardice. I did not just abandon a child. I abandoned the possibility of being someone better than I was." Pretty words, Catherine said, but without the edge of anger that usually accompanied her statements about him. "I know words are not enough. I know I cannot undo what I did. But Catherine, I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not even asking for a relationship. I am just asking for the chance to show Emma, and you, that people can change. That mistakes, even terrible ones, do not have to define us forever." Catherine looked at him, really looked at him. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a simple jacket. The arrogant posture had given way to something humbler. Most telling were his eyes. The coldness had been replaced by warmth, the calculation by genuine emotion. "If you hurt her," Catherine said slowly, "if you make her believe in you and then walk away, I will never forgive you. Not in this lifetime or the next." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because Emma does not know you are her father. She thinks you are just a nice man from the park. If you want to be more than that, you need to prove you will stay. Not for weeks or months, but forever. Can you do that?" Derek met her gaze steadily. I will prove it every single day for the rest of my life. The change was not instant. Trust, once shattered, rebuilds slowly. But Derek was patient. He attended Emma's preschool performances, sitting in the back row with tears streaming down his face. He learned to braid her hair, though his first attempts were disastrous and made Emma giggle uncontrollably. He read bedtime stories with silly voices that rivaled Catherine's. Catherine watched it all with cautious hope. She saw the man Derek was becoming, someone who valued presence over presence, time over money. He had sold his penthouse and moved to a modest apartment in their neighborhood. He had cut back his hours at work, delegating responsibilities to focus on what truly mattered. 6 months after that first park encounter, on a quiet Sunday morning, Catherine made a decision. She asked Derek to come over after Emma had gone to bed. He arrived nervous, clearly fearing she was about to end their arrangement. "Derek, I need to tell you something," Catherine began, her heart pounding. "Whatever it is, I will respect your decision," he said quickly. "Emma asked me yesterday why you do not live with us like other daddies live with their families." Derek's breath caught. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that some families look different, but that does not make them less special. But then she asked me if you were her daddy." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "She said she hoped you were because you make her happy." Derek could not speak. Tears rolled down his face as he processed the weight of those words. "I have spent months watching you, waiting for you to fail, to prove me right about who you were. But you did not fail. You showed up. You stayed. You changed." Catherine took a deep breath. "If you want to tell Emma you are her father, I will support that. But Derek, this is not temporary. This is forever. Once you claim her, you cannot walk away. Ever." "I will never walk away again," Derek said with absolute certainty. "I swear on everything I am." The conversation with Emma happened the next morning. They sat together on the couch, Emma between them, sensing something important was about to happen. "Emma, sweetheart, Derek and I need to talk to you about something special," Catherine began gently. "What is it, Mommy?" Catherine looked at Derek, giving him permission to speak. He took Emma's small hand in his, marveling at how tiny and perfect it was. "Emma, do you know how much I care about you?" Derek asked, his voice trembling. "Uh-huh. You are my best friend," Emma said happily. "I am so glad to be your best friend. But I want to tell you something important. I am also your daddy." Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? You are my daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart. I am. And I am so sorry I was not here when you were born. I made a big mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. But I promise you, from now on, I will always be here. Always." Emma processed this information with the quick adaptability of childhood. Then she threw her arms around Derek's neck. "I always wanted a daddy. Now I have one." Derek held his daughter for the first time, really held her, and wept openly. Catherine watched them, her own tears falling freely. The sight of Derek, the man who had once rejected this child, now clinging to her as if she were his lifeline, broke something open inside Catherine's heart. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep clutching a stuffed animal Derek had given her years ago through Catherine, Derek and Catherine sat together in the small living room. "Thank you," Derek said simply. "For giving me a chance I did not deserve." "You earned it," Catherine replied. "Not with words or money, but with showing up. With changing." "I have one more thing to ask you," Derek said, his voice nervous. "I know I have no right, I know I hurt you terribly, but Catherine, I never stopped loving you. I just did not know how to love you properly. Now I do. Or at least, I am learning. Would you consider giving us a chance? Not for Emma's sake, but for ours?" Catherine looked at this man who had broken her heart and then spent months piecing it back together. She thought about the cold CEO who had thrown her out of his office, and the humble man who now sat before her, asking for love instead of demanding control. "I am scared," she admitted. "I am scared of trusting you again." "I know. I am scared too. Scared of failing you. Scared of not being enough. But I would rather face that fear with you than live another day in the safety of loneliness." Catherine reached out and took his hand. It was not forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. Over the next year, they rebuilt their relationship from the ground up. Derek courted Catherine properly this time, with patience and genuine affection. They went on modest dates, talking for hours about everything they had missed. They argued sometimes, old wounds occasionally reopening, but they learned to navigate conflict with honesty and grace. Emma thrived with two parents who loved her and were learning to love each other again. She brought them together in ways neither expected, her innocent joy reminding them daily what truly mattered. On a warm spring evening, exactly 2 years after their reunion in the park, Derek took Catherine and Emma to that same park. Emma played on the swings while Derek knelt before Catherine. "I do not need a mansion to feel at home," he said, pulling out a simple ring. "I just need you and Emma. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I am worthy of this second chance?" Catherine looked at the man kneeling before her, then at her daughter playing nearby, then back at Derek. She saw their future stretched out before them, imperfect but real, built on hard-won trust and genuine love. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Emma's delighted shriek filled the air as she ran over, understanding somehow that something wonderful had happened. Derek scooped her up, Catherine wrapped her arms around them both, and they stood there in the fading light, a family forged not through perfection but through courage, forgiveness, and the willingness to change. The wedding was small, held in the same park where Derek and Emma had first met. Catherine wore a simple white dress, Emma a tiny version in pink. Derek cried through his vows, promising not just to love Catherine but to honor the woman who had been strong enough to survive his absence and brave enough to let him return. As they danced together at the modest reception, Emma between them giggling as they spun her around, Derek whispered to Catherine, "Thank you for teaching me what really matters." "Thank you for learning," she replied. They moved into a new home together, not Derek's former penthouse but a real house with a yard where Emma could play. Derek's former colleagues barely recognized the man he had become, someone who left work at 5 to coach Emma's soccer team, who remembered anniversaries and school events, who measured success not in dollars but in bedtime stories and family dinners. There were still hard days. Memories of the past sometimes surfaced, bringing pain with them. But Derek and Catherine had learned that love is not the absence of difficulty but the commitment to face it together. They had learned that people can change, that forgiveness is possible, and that the strongest families are sometimes those who had to fight hardest to stay together. Years later, when Emma asked about how her parents fell in love, they told her the truth. Not a fairy tale, but a real story about mistakes and redemption, about a woman strong enough to survive alone and a man brave enough to admit he was wrong. They told her that love is not perfect, but it can be powerful. That second chances are precious gifts, not guarantees. That family is not about never falling but about always getting back up. And as Emma grew, she carried these lessons with her, understanding that the greatest strength lies not in never failing but in having the courage to try again, to change, to love even when it is terrifying. Derek Ashford never forgot the man he had been, but he refused to let that man define who he became. He had learned, painfully and slowly, that true wealth is not measured in bank accounts but in the laughter of a daughter, the love of a wife, and the warmth of a home built on authenticity rather than perfection. And Catherine Walsh, who had once stood abandoned and heartbroken in a cold office, had learned her own lessons. That she was strong enough to stand alone but did not have to. That forgiveness does not mean forgetting but choosing to move forward. That love, real love, is not about grand gestures but about showing up, day after day, year after year, through the ordinary and extraordinary moments that make a life. Together, they built something neither could have created alone. A family. A home. A love story written not in fairy tale perfection but in the messy, beautiful reality of two imperfect people choosing each other, again and again, every single day. And that, they learned, was the truest kind of happy ending there was.